Hey Camp Create, this is Nicole, your Teen Services Librarian. Today we are going to be building the Estes Gnome Rocket. So I have all of my materials here and we're going to go through the material list that you'll need first. So the first thing that you'll need is a pair of scissors. You will also need a pencil, a ruler, some fine sandpaper, a sharp blade or hobby knife, masking tape, plastic cement. Today we're going to use crazy glue. We're not going to be launching this rocket though because we're not positive that the crazy glue is what we really need. You will be using plastic cement. And some clear tape as well. So here's our clear tape. We also have all the items that came out of our rocket pack. So we have our fin, launch lug, nose cone insert, our body tube, shock cord, streamer, and our engine hook. Last, we have a little branding. That's just a sticker you'll put on your device once you've completed building it. All right, so let's get started building. Okay, so the first step for assembling the gnome is to go ahead and get your nose cone assembled. This needs a little bit of time to dry, and so it makes sense that it would be our very first step. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to one of the gluing stations and you're going to take your plastic cement and you're going to make a really thin layer of glue around. I think that keeping the glue steady and turning the nose cone is going to be your best bet. We're getting just a really even bit of glue. And then you're just going to take your nose cone plug and you're going to set it in there. And then you're just going to set it off to the side and let that dry.
In the next step, use a ruler to draw a straight line down the length of your body tube.
Okay. Perfect. So you can see you have a really just like straight line that's going to help you to make sure that your engine hook and your recovery unit are going to be even with each other. Okay, so our next step is going to be making a couple of marks so that we know where to put our fin unit and our engine hook. So we're going to take our Sharpie or our pencil and we're going to make some notches at 3/8 of an inch from the bottom, 1.5 inches from the bottom, and then 1.5 inches from the top. Our notches should be approximately 1/8 inch long so that we know how wide to cut them. Just for your view though, it's going to be about this wide. This is our engine hook that we need to put in. So our next step is to take those notches that we measured out using our rulers and use a hobby knife or some sort of sharp blade to cut those 1/8 inch slits. Be careful not to use too much pressure on this because the body is quite thin and we don't want to make our slits too big. It's very important that they are just about the size of our notches. Perfect. There we go. So now that we have our notches in, our next set of instructions is to assemble our fin unit. So we're going to take our blue fin and we're going to place it over the top. We're going to use that line that we drew to just keep it in that line. let's stop about halfway because we do have a second task before completing that assembly. So we're going to take our engine hook and we're going to place it into the 1.5 from the bottom slit that we have created. We want to glue this in so that it stays exactly where it should be. So we're going to take our crazy glue and we're going to make a thin line of glue around it. Again, notice how I'm keeping my crazy glue in one place and just turning the body of my rocket. So then, being really careful to make sure that this opening is lined up with our engine hook, we're going to slide that down just enough to cover our engine hook. And we're going to let that dry. This part's a little bit tricky. We're going to attach our shock cord. The shock cord is this kind of rubber band kind of material that we are going to push into our top slit that we created 1.5 inches from the top of our rocket. It might take you a little bit of time to push it in there, but eventually you should see it come out the other side and you should be able to pull it a little bit. If you need to use a pencil to help you push it in very gently, you can do that. All right, so at this point you have pulled your shock cord through and you've got just a little bit left on the outside of your body. The next item you're going to use is your launch lug. You are going to want to make sure that when you put your launch lug in, the space for the shock cord that's cut out just a little bit from the plastic is where it needs to be, but also that your two holes on your launch lug and also your fin unit are lining up with each other. That may mean that you need to flip it. You're going to push that through. Make sure that your launch cord comes underneath that launch leg, which can be a little bit tricky because we're using some tight spaces. And then we're going to glue that in. And if you get some crazy glue on your hands, it might be a little frustrating for a moment. Not to worry, we will make sure that we get the crazy glue off your hands before the end of today. Again, just a reminder to make sure that you have your, that you don't crazy glue your hands to your rocket. How about that? All right, so are they lined up? Looks like it. I think we're good to go. All right, so we're getting there. Our next step is to prepare our flight recovery. So do you remember the nose cone that you put together very first step? This is where we bring it back. So we are going to attach our nose cone to our rubber banding material, also known as our shock cord. You're just going to make a double knot right here. Try not to leave too much excess of your shock cord on your knot side because we do want it to be able to do its job. So we've got our first knot and then our double knot. Don't be afraid to ask for a little bit of help if those pieces are just a little too small and you're having difficulty with making your knots. All right, so our next step is to attach our streamer, which is actually going to help to slow the rocket down once it starts coming back down from its launch. It acts kind of like a parachute. Might be a cool thing to think about, you know, why would it help to slow the rocket down? I kind of wonder. So you're just gonna use your clear tape to attach that. And you don't need too much, but you want to make sure that it's gonna stay in place. I think that that's good. Next, you're going to roll it into a pretty tight spiral roll. You're going to want to roll in the direction away from you. So you want your roll to be on top rather than on the bottom. And the reason why you want this to be tight is all of this has to fit inside of your very small rocket tube. Don't rush this. It's okay if it takes you a little bit of time. They say Rome wasn't built in a day. And they also say that good things take time. So just keep that in mind. All right. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take a half of a sheet of recovery wadding, which you have at your station, and we're just gonna kind of crumple it up like we would do with a tissue. This is not regular tissue paper. Don't use regular tissue paper. This is actually gonna help with keeping things from getting too hot inside the rocket. It's a special kind of material. If you need to push that in just a little bit with a pencil, you can do that. Don't push it too far in though. And then we're going to push everything inside of the rocket. This might be a little frustrating because it's going to be hard for everything to stand right now. So get a partner to have some help to get all of this pushed into your rocket. I kind of wish I had a partner to help me right now. My partner is videotaping though.
I can hold on to it. Teamwork.
Megan Burton for the win, peeps.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Sure does. Also, don't be afraid to use that pencil. Put that in there. Just get it in there. It's all gonna come out eventually. And voila. You now have your nose cone attached. So far we have put our fin together, we have put our engine materials on to get prepared for getting our engine inserted. We have all of our recovery wadding and our parachute inside of the cone, and we've attached our nose cone. This does not get glued in place because this is going to come off. Next up is going to be preparing the engine. Okay, so we're almost there. We have built our rocket's body, but now we need an engine to launch it, right? So we have our half-A engine from Estes Rockets. We also have our engine starter. What we're going to do is we're going to set down our rocket so that we can kind of see this hole punctured in the rocket fuel. We're going to take our starter and we are going to push it in. You want to be careful when you do this because it has to touch the propellant. I'm sorry, yes, it has to touch the propellant, but it also shouldn't be, you shouldn't break it either. And we're just going to bend that down. Okay, This is a really, really fine metal, so bending it down is not going to be hard at all. Make sure that you have your propellant actually touching your starter, and then you're going to take your stopper to secure it in place, and you're just going to pop that in. All right, so you have your engine, it's ready to go. And now the last step is just to place it into your rocket. So you're gonna wanna see this orange part at the bottom of it to help give you direction on how to put it in. You're just gonna slide it right in. It fits just perfectly. And here we are. We have a perfectly built gnome rocket.
I was gonna record it.